Well, it's that time of the week when I press this little button and this particular sound happens.
It's time now for the latest news on what's hot and what's not in the world of technology with Matthew Dickerson on Tech Talk. Here on TCFM 88.9.
Morning, Matthew.
Imagine all the people loving technology as much as we do, Richard. That'd be fantastic.
Oh, what a segue. Oh, give me a break. Now, you're going to review today what we expect for technology in 2021.
It's always a tough one. At the
Yes,
beginning
it
of every
is.
year, I write articles and I talk about what's going to happen over the next year, and it is very tough. But I thought, what the heck, go out on a limb again.
Yep.
Just don't play back this segment in a year's time and see how I went.
No, well, I'm going to keep these notes, so I'm going to question you this time next year if we're still around.
Yeah, thank you.
Only kidding. Pardon me. So what are we expecting?
Well, look, the first thing I suppose is in VR and AR. So virtual reality and augmented reality are two things that are happening, and most people confuse those two, Richard. They think they're the same thing, but they are distinctly different. The major difference is that virtual reality takes you somewhere else. Augmented reality leaves you where you are, but adds to the experience. So, for example, virtual reality, and I've spent a bit of time over Christmas playing with my son's virtual reality headset. So you put on the virtual reality headset and you go to some other world, somewhere else, and you do get completely immersed in that world because all your vision, all your sound is completely immersed in that. We saw a bit of this during the pandemic, during the height of the pandemic, where people couldn't travel anywhere, so they were taking their holidays in a virtual sense. What a brilliant idea. So one of my predictions for this year is that we'll see a lot more development in that VR space, not just for gaming, but for other experiences that you can't have in the real world at the moment because we can't travel. But going that step further, augmented reality, I think this is where we'll really see some development. So for example, you're sitting at home, you think, gee, I wouldn't mind a new bit of furniture. I can't go to the furniture shop and look at that furniture. Oh, how would it look there? I know. You just focus your camera on your lounge room and then use the tools available from that particular manufacturer or company, and you actually place the furniture in the lounge room that you've got. So you're adding to the reality you've got, you're augmenting the reality by adding in other components of it. So I can see a lot more development in that augmented reality, trying to mix our real world and the limited travel, if you like, that we've got with our real world, and mixing in some augmented reality in that. So those are two areas I see a huge area of development this year.
Tell you what, virtual reality I've experienced in the front cab of a locomotive going up the cutting between Bathurst and Orange, and it was quite amazing because the trains really work hard to get over the Taranah Hill, and that's what they did it for, and it's amazing. It was wonderful.
Yeah, and it's certainly something that's been developed over the years, but the graphics is getting so much better, the computing power is so much better. It does make you feel like you really are in that world. So yeah, look, I see those two, computing power increases, graphics are getting better, and the demand is getting higher as well.
Yep. All right, what about education?
Yeah, this is one thing. Educationalists have been developing their skills for years, being able to stand in front of a group of people, whether it be university or classroom at school, and read the room, make sure they're delivering content in that real world environment that is relevant and keeps the attention of people in the room. Suddenly, without any extra training, they were thrown into this world where they had to do education remotely. And it's fair to say, and educationists will say this, that it's not an ideal environment. And I think the educational experience for people in that environment has been different. And you could probably go as far as to say it hasn't been as good. And I think this is an area that we'll see a lot of development to try and get that educational process better. We did talk about one thing during the year, last year, where there's some tools available that will track the attention span or the actual attention that people are giving to the teacher, and then a teacher can see a real-time graph of that. So that's just really scratching the surface. I think we'll see a lot more development in remote education. Some of it may involve AR and VR, as we talked about just a second ago, but a lot of it will involve better ways for those educators to deliver content in ways that mean something. Now that might be a bad thing because our universities rely on a lot of overseas students coming in. We've got good educational standards, they're respected around the world, and there's good money to be made by universities for those overseas students coming in. Suddenly, if all those overseas students stop coming in, it reduces the economic impact of those students coming in. The university might still get their money, but the accommodation and the food and all those other things that go with people coming into the country might change. But you can't just say, I don't want the world to change, please stop it here. The world will change and you've got to be on board with it.
Yeah, my niece, who's a professor, found it particularly challenging. I was talking to her over Christmas, particularly challenging teaching, because she's more interested in research anyway, but she has to teach to keep food on the table. and her husband in the same boat, and they found it very difficult teaching this year in the particular areas that they do research in. By remote, they said it was vile.
Yeah. And that's where I see a lot of development that will occur. And some of that development might occur with the educationalists going back to getting additional education in better ways to present that remote content.
Yeah.
But it is a challenge.
Well, I mean, and she was looking at trying to find better ways to get the message across, so to speak, because she was getting so many questions from the students. Oh, we don't understand because we can't see it.
Yeah.
And a lot of her stuff is visual.
Yeah, right.
So it might be a bit of VR there.
Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah.
5G. Now, notice Huawei are looking at 6G already.
That's right.
So what 6G, 5G, explain.
Well, 5G, obviously the fifth generation of mobile technology, so that's one of my predictions is that it's not hot off the press. 5G didn't just get turned on yesterday, but the fact that Apple came out with their handsets at the end of last year, all their handsets are now 5G. Samsung have had 5G handsets for some time. Huawei have had them for some time. So you've got a lot of handsets coming out now. More and more towers are being put on. So there's discussion around 5G. And at the moment, the main reason people have been using 5G is so they can show their friends a speed test and go, oh, look at these numbers, aren't they impressive? But I think by the end of this year, we'll start to see 5G the norm, and we'll see more and more applications for 5G. The extra speed and the low latency associated with 5G, I think this will be the year that 5G really starts to take off. So at the end of the year, we'll be talking about things that are happening in 5G as if they've always been there. The same as happens so often with technology. It's like, wait up, how did we exist before this happened? So at the end of the year, I think we'll be talking about 5G as if it's always been there, and we'll see lots of applications for that. So keep an eye on that 5G space.
And 6G sort of sneaking in somewhere.
Oh, look, it's still a fair way off. There are some standards being talked about for 6G, but we're probably still, my guess would be 8 years away before we'll see any real development in real world 6G. 5G is only really just being turned on. A lot of areas to go that need to be turned on with 5G yet, so a lot of area to develop there.
All right, and finally at 28 to 10, your hobby, and you arrived in one this morning, electric vehicles. What are we going to see? I imagine hopefully prices will go down. What about legislation in Australia? Are you going to make any predictions there?
No, I predict that our politicians still don't get it, but that's I don't want to make this a political segment. I can talk about that part for ages. But there's some research out by a company called Abus Research, and they said that this is the year that electric cars will really start to make their mark. They've been around for a while now. They've been around for a number of years, and it's kind of been scratching the surface, but it's really been a very small part of the market. In Australia, very poor, 0.6% of the market.
Well, there's no incentive really, but although the prices are coming down.
Yeah, and the government could make some changes there, some minor changes that would make a big difference. So, for example, in Canada, if you're in Canada, you can drive in the bus lanes if you're in an electric vehicle. So they give you an advantage. It doesn't have to be monetary. They can give you an advantage by having an electric car. And that's one example. Other countries around the world, Norway, 55% of new car sales in Norway are electric vehicles. A few small government incentives. But this is the year it'll take off. ABUS has said by the year 2030, 25% of all new cars across the world will be sold as electric vehicles. So that's a huge development. There are 25 new models coming out this year in electric vehicles. I think we'll see the majority of those in Australia. This is worldwide, but I think we'll see the majority. But there's a whole mix in those. Some of them are from traditional manufacturers. Mercedes-Benz, for example, are coming out with an electric or 3 electric vehicles. So you've got some traditional manufacturers, you've got some performance ones, someone like Porsche, for example, and you've got some new brands that are coming out in those, well, brands that people haven't heard of. Rivian's been talked about a fair bit. That's a huge SUV. They're really going to pick up on that pickup market or pickup truck market in America. Tesla's going well with their numbers. They almost hit, they were just a few hundred short of their 500,000 target they had for last year for 2020, so that's fantastic. But when you consider that Tesla sold 500,000 or just under, and in America, pickup trucks alone, all across the different brands, there were 3 million pickup trucks sold. So 500,000 isn't really much in the whole scheme of things. Even in Australia, we have a million new cars sold each year. So the 500,000 sounds great, but even though Tesla's been forging the way, really it needs lots of other manufacturers to come on board. So we'll see that with traditional brands, with new brands coming to market, but keep an eye out. By the end of this year, we'll see a lot more of our friends driving electric vehicles because, again, new models, maybe some legislation, I'm not holding my breath for that one, but also prices will change and people will start to see it's not really just the early adopters, the innovators that will be getting onto these now. It'll start to move into that slight mainstream. again, I don't see huge changes in the Australian market by the end of the year, but worldwide, I think we'll see some fairly big changes.
All right, well, there we are. That's what's going to happen in 2021, according to Matthew Dickerson.
That sounds good.
Mate, look, thanks for coming in. Just on cars, I mean, for instance, you've got brands like Nissan moving into the market. Obviously, Audi are there, but Volkswagen are there as well.
Yeah.
And looking at Jaguar, Mercs,
That's
Beamers.
And this is the thing, there's all those traditional brands. I didn't even mention those 25 brands that I picked up on there. Hyundai I didn't have in those 25
That's
vehicles
right,
because
yeah.
they've already got a few electric vehicles. The Nissan wasn't in that list I had because the Leaf's already available now. You can buy a Leaf from a local Western Plains Automotive. Yeah, they're selling them.
I saw one before Christmas. In fact, I was talking to someone over there at WPA, and they sold a couple of Leafs during December.
Yeah, there you go. So those 25 are all new models coming out this year. And again, those traditional ones, and even some companies, for example, Seat, S-E-A-T, have got a little spin-off brand. So they've got another electric brand that still sits under the Seat umbrella, but they've got a spin-off brand. Volvo as well, they've got a spin-off brand underneath the Volvo brand. So there are companies that are bringing out their specific brands, and other ones that are just tagging their normal Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz, whatever it might be, on their normal branding to give people that trust in that brand.
Yeah, all right. Okay, mate. We'll see you next week, and we'll get back to other things. We'll leave the predictions. As I said, no, I won't save it. I should, but I
I'll
won't.
keep it there. It's always interesting to see how wrong I got it in a year's time.
Matthew Dickerson at Tech Talk, 24 to 10.